It was the spring of 1945, just weeks before the war would end, when our unit was ordered to cross into a place that wasn't marked on any official map. The locals called it the Forbidden Island. We'd been told it was just another remote outpost, a leftover Japanese supply point that needed sweeping. But from the moment our boat drew closer, the air felt different, too still, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. We were tired, half-starved, but disciplined. Orders were orders. We were to secure the island, check for stragglers, and report back. Yet even before we set foot on the beach, a sense of wrongness settled over us. The jungle loomed like it was watching, and the air carried a sour, metallic tang I'd never tasted before. That was the night everything I thought I knew about war changed. Before we start, make sure to hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened when our unit crossed into the Forbidden Island of 1945. We'd been on campaign for so long that the days blurred together into a single smear of exhaustion. By early 1945, most of us were gaunt, eyes sunken, uniforms patched with whatever thread or canvas we could find. Our boots were so worn through we'd stuff rags inside just to keep from feeling every stone, every root underfoot. I was 23 then, barely more than a boy, though the war had a way of making you older than your years. My squad was a patchwork of farm boys, factory hands, and drifters men who, under any other circumstance, would never have shared a beer, much less risk their lives for one another. Yet by then we were bound tighter than blood. We'd been reassigned to a smaller detachment under the banner of special clearance. That phrase was Army speak for mopping up isolated enemy positions the bigger divisions didn't have time for. It meant long, miserable hikes, forgotten trails, and islands nobody back home would ever hear about. The orders that sent us toward the Forbidden Island arrived on a dull gray morning. Our commanding officer, Captain Herrick, gathered us near the shoreline, where a handful of Higgins boats bobbed against the tide. He was a lean, hawk-eyed man with a permanent rasp in his voice, as though every word had to be scraped up from the bottom of his lungs. "There's a little patch of rock about 10 miles east of here," he said, tapping the edge of his map. "Intel says it's been used by stragglers. No sign of major fortifications. Our job is simple: land, sweep, secure, and signal." That was all. No fanfare. No questions allowed. But even from the start, there was something about the way he said it, curt, clipped, like he didn't want to dwell on the details, that unsettled me. We moved to the boats at dusk. The ocean was calm, but the closer we drew to the island, the less natural it seemed. The waves didn't lap so much as slump against the hull. The air had this odd heaviness, damp and close, though the wind was at our backs. Private Collins, the youngest of us, leaned over the gunwale and muttered, "Feels like we're sailing into a dead man's lungs." He had a way with words that could unnerve a man if you thought about them too long. The others chuckled nervously, but no one argued. From a distance, the island looked like a lump of dark jade rising out of the sea, its tree line thick and unbroken, with jagged cliffs at its edges. There were no visible structures, no sign of life, not even the birds we were used to seeing in those waters. That alone was strange. Every other island we'd landed on had been alive with calls and shrieks. Here, only the groan of the boat's engines broke the silence. When we finally made landfall, the beach sand stuck to our boots like wet cement. A half-buried skeleton of a fishing canoe lay at the high water mark, splintered and ancient. There was something about it that made us all step wide around it, as if touching it might wake something better left undisturbed. We pushed into the tree line, rifles ready, nerves taut. The jungle swallowed us almost immediately. Inside, it was darker than it should have been. The canopy wasn't particularly thick, but the light just seemed muted, as though the sun couldn't quite reach us. The air was swampy, stinking of rot and copper. Mosquitoes buzzed, but even they seemed sluggish, as if reluctant to feed. Our formation staggered over roots and vines. Collins hummed a tune under his breath until Sergeant Whitmore snapped at him to shut it. Whitmore was the oldest of us, mid-30s, built like an ox, and too stubborn to die. He'd been with me since '43, and I trusted his instincts more than anyone's. If Whitmore's hackles were up, mine followed. The first sign that this was no ordinary sweep came an hour inland. We stumbled across a clearing where the ground had been disturbed. earth overturned, trees scorched at their bases. Not from recent shelling, though. The soil had a grayish cast, almost like volcanic ash, but finer. Herrick crouched down, rubbed it between his fingers, then wiped them on his trousers without saying a word. The look in his eyes made me uneasy. We pressed on. As darkness fell, we set camp in a shallow depression, a place that offered at least some concealment. Fires were forbidden, too easy to spot, so we chewed our rations cold. The men talked in low murmurs about what they'd do when the war ended. Home, food, girls. That kind of talk kept us sane. But sleep didn't come easy. The jungle seemed restless around us, though there was no wind. Branches creaked as if under invisible weight. Once I swore I heard something moving between the trees. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Not the quick dart of an animal. Something watching. I wasn't the only one. "Cap," Whitmore said quietly, shifting closer to Herrick. "You hear that?" Herrick's jaw tightened. "Get some sleep, Sergeant." We move at dawn, but none of us really slept. At first light, we moved deeper inland. The terrain rose steadily, leading us toward a ridge. That was when we found it, the ruins. They weren't Japanese bunkers, nor did they look like anything I'd ever seen in the Pacific. The structures were stone, blackened with age, jutting out of the jungle floor like broken teeth. Strange markings carved into their faces, eroded but still visible. They didn't look like writing, at least not any I recognized. More like symbols, geometric yet somehow alive. Collins whispered, "This ain't man-made." Herrick snapped back, quiet, but even he couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. We circled the largest structure. Its entrance had collapsed, but the stones bore deep gouges, as if something had clawed its way either in or out. The marks weren't rust, nor moss, nor weather. They were deliberate, and they were enormous. I remember touching one of the grooves, feeling its depth. My hand came away coated in that same gray ash we'd found earlier. It wasn't long after that the jungle began to shift around us. First came the silence. Not the normal hush of dawn, but an absolute void of sound. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves. Just our boots crunching in the dirt, too loud in the emptiness. Then came the smell. A wave of something sour like spoiled meat mixed with wet iron. It rolled through the trees without warning, clinging to our throats. Several of us gagged, covering our noses. "Jesus Christ," Whitmore muttered. "What the hell died out here?" No one answered. Herrick tried to keep us moving, but the men's nerves were shot. Every step felt heavier, every shadow stretched longer than it should. The jungle itself seemed to press closer, suffocating, until we finally stumbled into another clearing, this one dominated by a pit. It was wide, circular, and unnaturally smooth, as though carved by something impossibly precise. The depth was impossible to gauge. Our grenades could have tumbled down and we'd never have heard them land. Around its rim were bones, human, animal, I couldn't tell. Some still bore shreds of uniform, Japanese by the look of them. Collins broke then. He turned, pale as chalk, muttering prayers under his breath. That's when Herrick did something I'll never forget. He pulled a folded slip of paper from his breast pocket, glanced at it, then tucked it away quick as lightning. It was a motion so brief most of the others missed it. But I saw. Orders, maybe. Or something else entirely. We didn't know then, but that pit was the beginning of everything that followed. And as the sun climbed higher, we realized we were no longer just soldiers on a sweep. We were trespassers in a place that didn't want us there. The deeper we pushed, the more the island seemed to reveal, and the worse it got. That's where the rising action truly began. The memory of that pit still presses down on me whenever I think back to the Forbidden Island. At the time, though, we didn't fully understand what we were dealing with. We were trained for battle, yes, but not for something like this. Still, Captain Herrick urged us forward, as though he was working against an unseen clock. We left the pit behind, but it left its weight inside of us. Every man walked a little more carefully now, rifles raised a little higher, breaths caught in their throats. The jungle felt tighter, heavier, its canopy filtering the light into sickly greens and yellows. I remember looking back once the path behind us already swallowed, as though the forest refused to let us leave. Sergeant Whitmore gave the order to stagger formation. He didn't say it outright, but we all knew he was trying to prevent panic. Keep your eyes sharp. This isn't a Sunday stroll. The hours passed, the heat suffocating. Our canteens grew lighter. Each time we paused, the silence pressed in around us. No bugs, no birds. Even the rustle of leaves seemed to hesitate. Then came the first scream. It was distant at first, muffled by the foliage, high-pitched and ragged. We all froze. No one could tell if it was human or animal, but it rose, broke, and fell into silence like something being torn apart. Collins gripped his rifle so tight his knuckles turned white. That wasn't a deer, was it? No one answered him. We couldn't. Herrick barked quietly. Eyes open. Forward. We obeyed, but every step after that felt like walking into a trap. The trees leaned over us like giants, their roots clutching at our boots, their bark scarred with grooves like fingernails dragged through wet clay. Another mile inland, we stumbled across the remains of a Japanese encampment. Tents, or what was left of them, shredded to tatters. Metal mess kits rusting in the mud. Rifles bent as though by massive pressure. And bodies. Not all of them complete. The strange thing was, none showed signs of gunfire. No bullet wounds. Instead, some looked crushed, others torn. A few seemed almost hollowed out. Skin clung to bone, but nothing remained inside, like the organs had simply dissolved. We stood in stunned silence. Whitmore muttered, "No man did this." Herrick scanned the camp, his jaw clenched tight. Search for papers. Anything left behind. We moved carefully, sifting through the ruins. Collins pulled out a half-burned journal, its pages warped with moisture. He handed it to me, hands trembling. I flipped through it. Most was unreadable, but one entry was still clear, written in frantic Japanese scrawl. I couldn't read it, but Corporal Hayes, one of our few men with a knack for the language, could. His face paled as he translated. They write of something in the jungle, something they woke, or something that found them. They call it the shadow beneath the earth. They say the ground itself breathes. Hayes's voice faltered as he read the last line. We cannot leave. The island will not let us. No one spoke after that. We moved on, slower now. The forest seemed to know we'd uncovered something. Our path sloped upward until we reached the ridge we'd seen from shore. From there, we could look back over the coastline. The beach where we'd landed was barely visible, shrouded by mist that hadn't been there before. Collins whispered, "It's hiding us. The island's hiding us." I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, but I couldn't. He wasn't wrong. From the ridge, we descended into a valley choked with vines and stagnant pools of water. The stench here was worse than before, sweet, foul, clinging to our throats like spoiled syrup. Flies buzzed, but they didn't seem interested in us. They swarmed toward one spot, a mound of earth at the far end of the clearing. We approached cautiously, weapons ready. The mound shifted. Not the way dirt collapses under weight. This was a pulse, a rise and fall, shallow but steady, as if the ground itself was breathing. Collins backed away, shaking his head. No, I'm not standing near that." Whitmore raised a hand. "Stay calm. Don't touch it." But Herrick crouched closer, eyes fixed on the shifting soil. For the first time, I saw real fear in his face, mixed with something else. Recognition. I asked quietly, "Sir, you knew?" He didn't answer. He just stood, straightened his jacket, and ordered us to move. That night, we made camp farther up the valley, away from the mound. But rest was impossible. The men whispered about what we'd seen, about the breathing earth, about the journal entries. No matter how much discipline we had drilled into us, the questions broke through. Is it real? What if it comes after us? Why are we even here? I lay awake, clutching my rifle, eyes darting at every shadow. That was when I heard it, faint at first, then stronger. A low hum, like a voice carried through the stone. It didn't come from above, it came from beneath. I pressed my ear to the ground. The vibration was real, rhythmic, like a heart buried deep below us. I didn't tell the others. I couldn't. They were already on edge, and saying it aloud might have broken them completely. But the island wasn't done with us. The following morning, Private Collins vanished. One moment he was there, trudging along with the rest of us, muttering under his breath. The next, gone. No sound, no cry, just absence. His pack lay in the dirt, straps torn open like paper. His rifle was bent at an impossible angle. We spread out, calling his name, but the jungle swallowed our voices. Herrick snapped, "No one wanders." Tight in formation. His voice was cold, steady, but his hands trembled on his map. Whitmore glared at him. "We can't just leave the kid." Herrick shot back, "He's gone. And if you want to join him, go right ahead." It was the first crack in our unity, the first sign of something festering between us. We pressed on, but every man carried Collins' absence like a stone in his gut. By midday, we reached another ruin larger than the first, half swallowed by the jungle. This one had a stairway leading downward into blackness. Herrick stopped us there. He studied the entrance, then that slip of paper again. This time I caught a word at the top, scrawled in English, "Objective." He folded it away before anyone else noticed. Whitmore finally snapped, "Captain, what aren't you telling us?" Herrick's eyes flickered. "Orders! Orders don't explain what's happening to my men," Whitmore growled. But Herrick didn't elaborate. He just motioned us down the stairway. The air grew colder with every step. The smell worsened, thick and metallic, until we could barely breathe without gagging. Our flashlights cut through the dark, their beams trembling over carvings that twisted along the walls. They weren't Japanese. They weren't any language I knew. Spirals, shapes that bent in ways that made the eye ache, symbols that seemed to shift if you stared too long. And the deeper we went, the stronger that hum became. By the time we reached the chamber below, we were all drenched in sweat, shaking from something we couldn't name. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a stone altar, slick with age and streaked with something dark. Around it lay more bones, stacked in neat rows, as though arranged deliberately. The hum here was deafening. It wasn't sound so much as vibration, rattling our teeth, shaking our chests. Some men dropped to their knees, covering their ears, though there was nothing to hear, only to feel. Herrick stepped forward. His face was pale, his eyes locked on the altar. He whispered something I couldn't catch, words meant only for him. That was when the shadows moved. They didn't belong to us. They stretched too long, bent at wrong angles, crawling across the walls like liquid. They converged on the altar, shifting, writhing. One of the men screamed and fired. The shot cracked. The flash illuminated the chamber, and for a split second I saw it. Something vast, blacker than the dark, its form impossible to comprehend. Not flesh, not smoke, but something in between. The bullet did nothing. The shadows surged forward. That was the moment we realized the island wasn't just cursed, it was alive, and we were intruders in its body, and it was only beginning to notice us. The chamber erupted in chaos. Men fired blindly into the shadows, the gunfire deafening in the confined space, echoing back at us in rolling thunder. Yet every shot vanished into blackness, swallowed as though the darkness itself drank it in. The muzzle flashes only revealed more shapes, moving curling tendrils of shadow that seemed to stretch toward us. "Fall back!" Whitmore bellowed, his voice steady despite the panic. He grabbed Collins' abandoned rifle from one man's hands and kept firing. The bullets weren't doing a thing, but the action steadied the men, kept them from breaking outright. Herrick didn't move at first. He just stared at the altar, transfixed. His lips moved, whispering words none of us could make out. For one terrifying moment, I thought he was praying. Then I realized it wasn't prayer, it was recognition. He was speaking the same phrases I'd seen etched into the stone walls. I rushed to him, grabbed his arm, yanked hard. "Sir, we need to get out!" His eyes snapped to me. They were wide, glazed, but something burned in them. "It's here," he said hoarsely, just like they said. Before I could ask what he meant, the shadows surged forward. A tendril lashed across the floor, striking one of our men. He screamed once and vanished into the dark, as if pulled beneath an invisible surface. There was no blood, no body left behind, just emptiness where he had stood. That broke us. We scrambled back up the stairs, dragging each other, half-hauling men who stumbled. The vibration in the ground grew stronger. the hum rattling through the stone. By the time we burst out into the jungle light again, we were ragged, breathless, and down by 2 more men. Herrick was the last to emerge. He paused at the entrance, staring back into the ruin, as though part of him wanted to remain. Only when Whitmore shoved him did he move. The jungle outside felt different now, darker. Even though the sun still hung overhead, the trees seemed to lean closer, the shadows between them deeper, as though the island itself had shifted after our intrusion. We regrouped, panting, shaken. Hayes leaned against a tree, wiping sweat from his brow. That wasn't anything natural. No, Whitmore said firmly. He turned to Herrick. Captain, you're going to tell us exactly what our orders are, right now. Herrick's jaw tightened. He pulled out the folded slip of paper he'd been hiding and held it up. The edges were smudged, the ink faded, but the words were clear enough. It wasn't a map. It wasn't even standard orders. It was a directive, stamped with military insignia none of us recognized. The text was short. Investigate anomaly. Recover artifact if possible. Suppress witnesses if necessary. The words hit us like a physical blow. Suppress witnesses. Whitmore's face darkened. You dragged us into this knowing something was here. Herrick shook his head. I didn't know what. Just that command wanted something recovered. Something buried here since before the war. The Japanese stumbled onto it first. Our superiors, they want to make sure it doesn't stay in enemy hands. Enemy? Whitmore's voice was sharp. You saw what's down there. That thing isn't an enemy you can fight. It's not even human. Herrick shoved the paper back into his pocket. His voice dropped. Orders don't care about what we believe, Sergeant. We complete the mission. That was the crack that split us. Half the men still clung to discipline, trusting Herrick's authority because it was all they had left. The other half looked at him as if he were already dead to them. I stood between both sides, heart pounding, torn. I wanted to believe Herrick had a reason, that this madness served some purpose. But deep down, I knew Whitmore was right. The jungle seemed to agree. That night, the ground itself began to shift beneath us. The soil rose and fell as if something massive moved below. The vibrations rattled our canteens, made our rifles chatter against the dirt, and always that hum, growing louder, seeping into our bones. No one slept. Around midnight, Hayes shook me awake. His face was pale, eyes wide. Listen. At first I thought it was the hum again. Then I realized it was something else. Voices, whispering, faint but clear, threading through the trees. They weren't speaking English. They weren't speaking Japanese either. The words twisted in ways that felt familiar, yet impossible to understand. Men stood, rifles raised, searching the darkness. But the voices didn't come from around us. They came from beneath us. Then the earth cracked. Not wide, not deep, but enough that the soil split open in a jagged line through camp. A foul stench rose, the same rot and metal tang we'd smelled before, only stronger. Whitmore barked for the men to move, pushing them away from the crack. I glanced back just in time to see something shift in the opening. Not a hand, not claws, just darkness, thick and writhing, reaching like smoke with weight. We fled, stumbling through the jungle, guided only by moonlight. Branches tore at us, roots caught our boots, but none of us cared. Anything was better than what lay below. By dawn, we'd reached higher ground again, a plateau overlooking the valley. The jungle spread below us, mist curling over its canopy. From up there, we saw what we hadn't noticed before. The entire island was shaped wrong. The valleys, the ridges, the clearings, they formed a pattern, not random geography, but design. Like the entire landmass had been carved into a symbol so vast, it could only be seen from above. And in the center of that design was the pit. The realization chilled us. This island wasn't just hiding something. The island itself was part of it. Whitmore muttered, "We can't stay. We need to signal the boats. Get out." Herrick shook his head. "We haven't completed the mission." That nearly sparked a mutiny. One of the privates, a quiet man named Reed, finally snapped. "To hell with the mission. You saw what happened to Collins. You saw the shadows. You want us to die for some paper from a desk back home? Herrick's hand hovered near his sidearm. For a moment, I thought he'd draw it. The tension was so sharp it felt like a wire ready to snap. Then the island made the choice for us. From below, deep in the valley, the trees began to shift. Not sway, shift. Whole sections of jungle sank downward, as though pulled by an unseen tide. The ground trembled, rocks sliding beneath our boots. And then we saw it. Something massive rose from the center, just at the edge of the pit. Not fully visible, not fully formed, just hints of a shape, black against black. Taller than the trees, moving with impossible slowness, as if the earth itself was pushing it upward. Every man froze. It didn't roar. It didn't lunge. It simply existed, and its presence alone made our hearts hammer, as though we'd been dropped into ice water. Herrick whispered, "It's waking." Whitmore rounded on him. "This is your mission? To bring that into the world?" But Herrick didn't answer. He just stared, transfixed, as though his whole life had led to this moment. The men started shouting. Some demanded we retreat to the beach. Others begged to fire artillery signals, call for bombardment. The arguments swelled until they drowned each other out. And through it all, the island kept moving. That was when the realization struck me the Japanese soldiers we'd found hadn't been wiped out in battle. They'd been consumed, erased by whatever slept beneath this place. And we were following their footsteps step for step. If we didn't leave soon, the Forbidden Island wouldn't just claim us, it would use us. By the time the sun fell again, the men were fractured, their trust splintered. Herrick still clung to his orders. Whitmore fought to keep the squad alive, and the rest of us stood caught in the middle, trapped between loyalty and survival. But the island had no intention of letting us decide for ourselves. Because that night, the voices came again louder, closer. This time, they spoke our names. The night the voices spoke our names was the night the island finally claimed its hold on us. It started as a whisper, faint and fractured, threading through the branches overhead. I thought at first it was just my exhaustion, but then I heard it again. My own name, carried on the still air. Soft, deliberate, not shouted, spoken, as though by someone standing just behind me. I spun, rifle raised, but no one was there. All around camp, the men stiffened, heads jerking, eyes wide. Each of them was hearing it too. Their own names. Collins even, though he was already gone. The sound wasn't coming from any single direction. It was everywhere, woven into the jungle itself. "Stay sharp," Whitmore barked, his voice hard and steady. But I caught the tremor in it. Herrick stood apart from us, staring into the dark. His lips were moving again, whispering along with the voices, like he knew the words, like he'd been expecting them. That broke the last of our patience. Whitmore marched over, shoved Herrick back against a tree. "What are you doing? What have you gotten us into?" Herrick's eyes burned with something feverish. "It's communication, Sergeant. Don't you understand? It knows we're here. It's reaching out." "Reaching out," Whitmore snapped. "It's killing my men." "It hasn't killed you yet," Herrick hissed. "Don't you see? We're meant to witness this, to carry it back." The men around us muttered angrily, some raising rifles not at the jungle, but at Herrick. That was when the ground shifted again. The soil beneath us heaved upward, throwing men off their feet. A crack split across camp, wide enough that one man nearly tumbled in. The stench that followed was unbearable, rancid and metallic, thick enough to make our eyes water. And then the jungle moved. The trees around us leaned, not with the wind, but with intent. Branches creaked, bending toward us, roots tearing upward as though dragged by something below. We scrambled to regroup, but the shadows surged again, stretching across the ground, twisting like liquid. They reached for us. One man screamed as the blackness coiled around his legs and yanked him into the soil. He vanished without a trace, his rifle clattering uselessly to the dirt. Panic erupted. Men fired in every direction, muzzle flashes lighting the clearing in bursts of orange. But the bullets passed through the shadows as though they were mist. Herrick shouted above the noise. "The altar! We have to return to it!" "Are you out of your mind?" Whitmore roared. "It's the source," Herrick cried. "We can contain it." Contain it. Those words chilled me more than the voices. Herrick wasn't trying to destroy whatever lived here. He wanted to bind it, to harness it, to bring it back. That was the mission. The men shouted in protest, but the ground trembled again, forcing our decision. If we stayed in that clearing, we'd all be gone before sunrise. So we ran. The jungle fought us with every step. Vines snagged our rifles, roots split beneath our boots, shadows darted in our periphery. I felt the ground pulse with every stride, as though something massive beneath us was stirring with hunger. When we burst into the ruin again, the air felt colder, sharper. The stairway yawned before us, black and waiting. None of us wanted to go down there, but the shadows closed in behind, driving us forward. We descended into the chamber, our flashlights cutting weak beams across the carvings. The hum was louder now, almost deafening, vibrating through our skulls until our teeth ached. The altar loomed in the center, slick with that dark sheen, its surface etched with shifting symbols. Herrick strode forward like a man possessed. "This is it. This is what command wanted." Whitmore aimed his rifle at him. "One more step, and I put you down." But Herrick didn't stop. His hand brushed the altar's surface. The chamber shuddered. The carvings on the walls lit faintly, glowing with pale light, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. The shadows coiled tighter, pouring toward the altar like streams of ink. Herrick turned to us, his face illuminated by that unearthly glow. "Don't you see?" It responds to us. To will. It's not mindless, it's power. And then the altar opened, not like a door, not like a hatch, but as though the stone itself split, revealing a hollow core filled with black liquid that shimmered like oil. From within rose a shape, formless and yet immense, stretching higher, blotting out the light. We staggered back, firing wildly. The bullets sparked against stone, vanished into the dark. The entity didn't flinch. It just kept rising, its presence pressing down on us like the weight of the ocean. Whitmore shouted, "Fall back! We can't fight it!" But Herrick stepped closer, arms raised. "It recognizes authority. Stand down." The shadows swarmed him, coiling up his legs, his torso. He didn't resist. He welcomed it. For a heartbeat, his eyes locked on mine, and I swear there was triumph there. Then he was gone, dragged into the altar's black core without a sound. The glow dimmed. The chamber shook, dust raining from above. The shadows writhed violently, no longer controlled. Without Herrick, whatever tenuous balance had existed shattered. "We have to collapse it," Whitmore yelled. He fumbled for grenades, pulled pins, and hurled them at the altar. The explosions cracked, the concussive force rattling the chamber. Chunks of stone fell, symbols splintered, dust choked the air. The altar cracked down the middle. The liquid inside spilled across the floor, steaming, burning into the stone. The hum grew into a roar, so loud it felt like it would split us apart. We fled, dragging each other up the stairway as the ruin collapsed behind us. Stone crashed, shadows shrieked in voices not human. The ground outside split open in jagged lines, swallowing trees, tearing the jungle apart. On the ridge, we turned back once. The ruin was sinking, collapsing into itself, the earth folding inward as though the island wanted to bury its secret again. The pit in the valley widened, glowing faintly from within. Something vast shifted below, but it didn't rise. Not yet. The island trembled for long minutes, then stilled. We stood in silence, every man gasping, faces coated in dust and sweat. Herrick was gone. Half our squad was gone. And the Forbidden Island was no less mysterious than when we'd arrived. Whitmore looked at me, his expression grim. "We're leaving. Tonight." No one argued. We moved as fast as our battered bodies would carry us, cutting back toward the coast. The jungle felt alive, but it no longer attacked. It watched. It waited. By dawn, we staggered back onto the beach where our boat still lay, half hidden in the tide. The mist had lifted, the sky washed in pale morning light. For a moment, we thought we'd made it. Then the voices rose one last time, carried on the wind. Not whispers this time, not names, just one phrase repeated over and over in a language none of us should have understood, but somehow did. "You cannot leave." The sand beneath our boots shifted, rippled like water. Whitmore raised his rifle, defiant. Move! We hauled the boats into the surf, shoved them out with every last shred of strength. The water surged around us, thick with unseen current, but the boats caught and drifted. The island receded behind us, silent, still. Only when the horizon swallowed it did the whispers fade. We didn't cheer, we didn't speak. We just rode, every man hollow-eyed, knowing what we'd left behind wasn't gone, only sleeping again. That was the climax of our nightmare. But the forbidden island wasn't finished with us yet, because once we returned to base, the true weight of what we'd seen and what Command already knew would come crashing down. The sea carried us back like broken men. Not a word passed between us during the crossing. Every dip of the oars was mechanical, every face drained of color. I don't think any of us dared look back. The island hung in our minds like a ghost, a presence pressing on the back of the skull. When we finally reached our base, a small, battered installation clinging to the shoreline of another island, it was almost unreal to hear the normal sounds of soldiers again. The bark of an officer's orders, the clatter of boots on gravel, the smell of mess hall rations wafting through the humid air. Ordinary life. We looked like men who had crawled out of a grave. They sent us straight to debriefing, a room with bare walls, a table, and 2 officers in clean uniforms who studied us as though we were specimens. One took notes, the other smoked silently, watching us through narrowed eyes. Sergeant Whitmore did most of the talking. He gave the facts as best he could. The ruins, the pit, the shadows, the altar, Herrick's death. He didn't embellish, didn't speculate, just the raw sequence of events. When he finished, the note-taking officer set his pencil down. "You're saying your captain disobeyed orders?" Whitmore's jaw tightened. "I'm saying our captain's orders were different from ours." The second officer leaned forward, smoke curling from his cigarette. "And what exactly do you believe you encountered on that island?" Whitmore hesitated. His eyes flicked to us, then back. "Something we weren't trained for. Something we couldn't kill." The officer tapped his ash into a tray. "But you destroyed it, correct?" Silence hung heavy. We all knew the truth. We hadn't destroyed anything. We'd only delayed it, buried it again, if the island allowed it. Finally, Whitmore said, "We stopped it from spreading. That's all I'll claim." The officers exchanged a glance, some unspoken decision passing between them. Then the one with the pencil closed his notebook. "That will be all." They dismissed us back to quarters. No praise, no medals, not even the faintest acknowledgement that we'd survived something extraordinary. Just the cold efficiency of men checking boxes on a report. That night, Whitmore called what remained of us together. There were only 6 left from the 12 who had landed. We sat in the dim light of a single lamp, the sounds of the base muffled beyond the walls. He looked at each of us in turn. What we saw on that island doesn't get spoken of again. Not to the men here, not to anyone back home. Do you understand? One of the privates bristled. "So we just stay quiet? Pretend half our unit didn't vanish?" Whitmore's voice hardened. "You think they'll believe you? You think Command wants this known? Look around. They already know. Herrick was following orders from someone higher. If we talk, it won't be the truth that spreads. It'll be whatever story they decide to tell." His words settled over us like chains. We knew he was right. Still, the silence was a bitter weight. We carried it through the following weeks, even as the war sputtered toward its end. Other units celebrated the rumors of surrender, the whispers that it would all be over soon. But for us, there was no joy. We'd already seen what the end of a war didn't stop, the things that waited in the cracks, the things older than any nation or army. When Japan finally surrendered, the rest of the world cheered. Our unit was folded into another company, our records blurred, our names shuffled. Collins' death was marked as missing in action. Herrick's as combat casualty, nothing more. And the Forbidden Island? It wasn't on any map. It was as if it had never existed at all. I thought perhaps that was the end of it, that maybe time would dull the memory, soften the sharp edges of fear. But years later, after I'd returned home, married, tried to build a life, I received a letter. No return address, no name, just a single sheet of paper inside. It was the same handwriting I'd glimpsed on Herrick's slip. 3 words scrawled across the page: It still sleeps. I burned that letter in my yard, watching the paper curl into ash. But I never forgot it. Even now, decades later, I sometimes wake at night with the hum still in my ears, vibrating through my bones. I lie there staring at the ceiling, half expecting the ground beneath my house to shift, for the soil to rise and fall as though something enormous were stirring far below. And I wonder if, somewhere across the ocean, that island still waits. Silent, patient, breathing. That was our aftermath. Not medals, not glory. Just silence, sealed orders, and the knowledge that we had walked into a place men were never meant to tread. And though the world moved on, we never really left that island. I often ask myself what war truly leaves behind. Not the medals in glass cases, not the parades or the speeches. It's the things unspoken, the memories locked away because they don't fit the clean lines of history. What happened on that island in 1945 isn't in any textbook. It isn't whispered in the corners of veterans' halls. It isn't even in the reports that sit in military archives, because those were rewritten long ago. But it's in us, in the survivors, or rather what few of us remained. I've carried this story in silence for decades. The world has changed, nations have risen and fallen, but one thing never left me the weight of what we stirred that spring. The island wasn't a battlefield. It was a wound in the earth, one that bled shadows instead of blood. And men like Herrick, they weren't sent there to win a fight. They were sent to learn if the wound could be opened wider. That truth was harder to bear than the memory of the shadows themselves. Whitmore, I later learned, never made peace with it either. He stayed in the service after the war, rose in rank, but I heard he died young, worn down by something no one could name. Hayes turned to teaching, but in his last letter to me, he confessed he sometimes still heard the voices at night, whispering his name. The others, most kept silent, but silence does not mean peace. As for me, I chose a quieter path, a farm, a family, days filled with the simple work of keeping soil alive and crops steady. You'd think that would heal a man, but working the earth only reminded me of what the ground can hide. Every time the wind shifted and the soil seemed to breathe, I'd feel that dread again. And yet, I can't deny there's a strange clarity in knowing. We saw the veil pulled back, just for a moment. We saw that the world is older, darker, and more alive than we're taught to believe. Maybe that's a kind of gift, even if it came wrapped in terror. What lingers with me most is not the fear, but Herrick's face in those last moments. He wasn't afraid. He was certain that what he was doing was necessary, maybe even noble. I wonder sometimes if command believed the same, or if they knew they were feeding men into something that would never let us return whole. That question has no answer, and perhaps it shouldn't. The forbidden island is still out there, I know it. Somewhere in that vast ocean, hidden by mist and secrecy, it waits. I don't believe it can ever truly be destroyed. At best, it sleeps. At worst, it stirs when no one is watching. But I also know this, it has boundaries. It didn't follow us home, not in body, not in form. The world beyond its shores continues, untouched, unaware. That counts for something. Maybe the price we paid was enough to keep it contained, at least for now. I tell you this not for glory, nor for pity. I tell it because silence has a way of feeding shadows, letting them grow in the dark. Stories are a kind of light, even the grim ones, especially the grim ones. So if you've listened this far, if you felt the weight of my words, take them as a warning. Not all battlefields are marked on maps. Not all wounds can be healed. And not all victories are meant to be celebrated. Sometimes survival itself is the only victory. And sometimes the deepest scars are carved into places no one will ever see. That's the truth of 1945. That's the truth of the Forbidden Island. We left it behind, but it never really let go of us. And if you ever find yourself on a quiet shore, staring at an island shrouded in mist, and the air tastes faintly of copper and ash, turn back. Do not land. Do not enter. Because some places in this world were never meant for men. That's the end of my story. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking beside me through the shadows. Before you go, remember to subscribe and leave a comment with where you're listening from. It helps keep stories like this alive, and maybe in some way it helps keep the shadows where they belong. Don't turn off the light now. If the story chilled you, subscribe to Blackout War Stories. And for more horror, the next nightmares are waiting on your screen.